Hey folks, Steve Bird here, and we've got an interview today with Boyd Craven. Boyd's a great guy. We've hung out in real life multiple times. You know, he's one of those folks that you feel like you've known all your life the first time you meet him. You know, he's the real deal. Who he is online is who he is in person. So, say hi, Boyd, and welcome. Thanks for coming this morning.
How's it going?
Good. So you are in Michigan, correct?
Yes.
And where in Michigan are you without giving out too much OPSEC? Are you in downtown Detroit?
No, I'm outside of Flint.
Oh, so
I
you're
always tell people, I'm in the Flint area because if I told them the specific town, they, not even OPSEC, they wouldn't even know of it.
right. So you got the good water.
Yeah, yeah. I've got my own well. We get it tested a couple times, like every other year.
Just in
So,
case you're getting some Flint groundwater contamination.
right. Well, even where I live, we don't get Flint water. So that we're lucky. If we had to hook up to the city water, it wouldn't be Flint water.
Awesome. Um, so your state has obviously been making the news a lot lately because of the behavior of a certain elected official. How is that impacting your life, and what is your view on all those crazy restrictions, like not being able to vegetable garden or mow your lawn?
When she first announced the shutdown and the stay at home order, at the time people were like, I don't know, they're like, it's probably the right thing to do. I've always kind of thought when you force compliance, you're losing liberty. What she should have said is, here's the responsible thing to do: stay home, don't go out, don't do this stuff. When it was getting close for that stay at home order to run out, she doubled down. She extended it out quite a bit. And she says, you can't, you can't go out for this. You can't, if you own a second property, you can't go there. If you've got a motorboat, you can't go out and use it. But if you have a kayak or a canoe, that's okay. Um, Garden centers, lawn mowing services, construction, she like shut all that down. And there were two armed protests. The first one happened concurrently with Operation Gridlock, and the second one happened, they said, at her house, but I'm assuming it's the governor's mansion. So when she came back to announce yet another extension, she walked back her restrictions to about where they were before. But, personal responsibility needs to always trump enforced compliance. So I don't know. There's a vote going on today whether or not the state legislator is going to allow her to continue using the emergency. What's the word I'm thinking of here?
Declaration.
Yeah, yeah, because she only gets it for 28 days at a time, and today it runs out. So they either have to extend it or shut her down.
You mentioned the kayak thing. We see it across the nation. We see a lot of ridiculous things like that. If you're in a little outboard engine powered John boat by yourself, how is that different virus wise than if you're in a kayak? And there's some states where now they've opened up fishing again, which baffles my mind that you could ever outlaw that in the first place. But you're only allowed to have two people in the boat. So you can be cooped up in a house with an unlimited amount of people. You could have a family of four, drive to the lake in a car together in the same car, but then that same family of four can't get on their own boat and go out onto the lake. How on earth does that have anything to do with a virus? You
Right.
know?
And I'm
And
still trying to figure out what a motor has to do with spreading the COVID virus too. It makes no
exactly.
sense.
And in California, there was this town in California. If you saw that post I made the other day where they outlawed riding bicycles on city trails, but you can still walk on them. And it says
Right.
due to COVID-19. What? I mean, That is absolutely what that tells you right there is that there's somebody on the city council that likes to walk on those trails and they don't like to share them with bikers. So they're taking advantage, and this is a real small scale, small town kind of thing. But it just kind of shows what these politicians are doing. They're taking advantage of a situation to, like that one, what was it, Congressman James Clyburn, was that him who said, this is a tremendous opportunity to reshape things to fit our vision? That's
Yep.
exactly what they're doing, even on the small local levels.
Yeah, and I don't think they're ever going to give that power back that they grabbed for themselves because not enough people stood up.
Right. Well, we haven't rolled back anything from 9/11, have we? I mean,
Nope.
Homeland Security's still there, and NDAA's still there.
The Patriot Act.
When government, when government takes power, they don't give it back, and when they take our freedoms and curtail them, they don't give them back.
Yep.
It just doesn't happen.
It's scary. It's sometimes hard for me to watch what's going on because it's like I felt like conspiracy theorists, sometimes writing about this kind of stuff, and then it's like, oh no, this is real life now. This isn't fiction anymore. This
Right.
is actually happening.
They're not shooting people yet,
Yeah.
but
No, but they are tackling a dad and daughter playing baseball in the park and arresting them.
right. The dad and daughter who lived in the same house and had already cross contaminated each other, all they were going to do. And now you've got a stranger tackling them and rubbing all over them, and, a stranger who constantly makes contact with other people throughout the day. Who, if anybody's a carrier, it's that guy, if you're actually worried
Right.
about that kind of thing. That guy is now putting his hands on them and getting within 6 feet of them and antisocial distancing them when they were by themselves.
Exactly.
you know?
Or do you see the case of the wakeboarder out in California or the
Yeah.
paddleboard or whatever that
How do
pad,
you?
paddleboard?
How is he
Um,
not completely social
right,
distancing?
right. He's out there on the water by himself, and it takes an entire sheriff's department boat full of people to catch this guy and arrest him. Like, what was the point?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I hope police officers are paying attention to what's going on. I know there's some great ones out there, and I got some friends that are great ones, but man, you can't just follow orders sometimes.
Yeah.
Our most basic civil liberties. The When the government can tell you can't be by yourself in the ocean on a surfboard or a wind sail, whatever he was on, uh, what can you do? You
Right.
know, I lived in Washington State for about 13 years, and I fished a lot while I was up there, and I would salmon fish in a lot of streams, and that once you get out of Seattle and that whole area, the Puget Sound area, the rest of the state is very sparsely populated. You could go fishing and be miles and miles and miles from the next person on the side of the riverbank, completely by yourself, as socially distanced as is humanly possible inside this country, right? And that is
Hmm.
now illegal because of social distancing and because of COVID-19. That makes no sense. But you can go to a crowded apartment complex to stay with you in your apartment with your roommates. You can go to the grocery store. You can go do all these things, and but you can't go fishing by yourself on a riverbank in the middle of the mountains.
Meanwhile, the food distribution and the supply chain is breaking down. You're told, only so many people are allowed in the stores now. So they start lining people up in the parking lot to get in the store to go buy the stuff that they don't even have. Um, and now food producers and processors are shutting down. I mean,
Straight out of a novel.
yeah, I
What
mean,
what a lot
let's
of
fish.
what a lot of I'm glad you brought that up. What a lot of people don't realize about, especially the pork and chicken industries, is that they're mostly contract farms. So
Mhm.
specifically those two. My neighbor has a chicken farm, and it's a Coke Foods contracted farm. He has 68,000 chickens at a time, and he doesn't own a single one of them. They're not his. They bring him in as little baby chicks. He raises them up. They come and haul them away, and that's how the pork industry is right now too. Those pork farmers do not own those pigs. So people might be thinking, why are these farmers killing all their own pigs? They're not their pigs. And if Big Ag, and Big Ag is very connected, If Big
Mm-hmm.
Ag is on board with an agenda and they tell that farmer to destroy the pigs, if that farmer doesn't do it, he's violating his contract with whoever one of those two big ag companies are, and he's going to lose his business. They're
Right.
not his pigs, and people don't. I don't think most people realize that. I think they look at, and the same thing with dairy, when they look at these dairy farmers dumping out milk. I know one that's part of a big co-op, and essentially the co-op tells them what to do. The co-op controls it all, not them. So these guys aren't dumping out their own products and slaughtering their own products. They're following the orders of the people who legally control those products.
Right. Well, and I heard a lot of the issues with the dairy portion too is with the restaurants and commercial stuff shut down. That was what, a third to almost half of their market, and to keep the prices stable without tanking the prices everywhere. That was one reason, but I don't know how accurate that is. But I've
Right.
read it a couple different spots now.
Yeah, there's always a little something to that, but at the same time, there's always just enough truth in a good lie to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
you know, just like none of us who question the actions of the government think that the virus itself is a hoax. It's true. We all believe it's true. We question the actions of the government because they're very suspect, and it makes you question the seriousness of the situation. Uh, but again, there's just enough truth wrapped up in that lie to make it real. If there really is a virus, whether it's more deadly than the flu or not, if it really exists, it lends credibility to the lie that you all have to let's just delete the economy and destroy it all.
Right. Well, and this is kind of related, but you know, talk show hosts and other politicians said, "Man, if this, it's going to take a crashed economy to switch the party
He
in
actually
the
said he
next
wanted it.
general election."
In
Mm-hmm.
that case, he said, "Sorry if that hurts you people, but we need a recession."
Yep.
It's insane,
I know.
and it doesn't matter what where you sit on the economic spectrum either. I know people from dirt poor to ridiculously wealthy, and I know them on a first hand basis, and every everybody that pays attention is kind of seeing it the same, regardless of where their bank account sits right now.
Right.
You know,
Well, it kind of makes me wonder if everyone, that's if every one of these politicians has a bunker full of food somewhere.
oh well, Nancy
Well,
Pelosi's got a
well, yeah,
bunker full
maybe
of
they
ice
do.
cream
Yeah, I was
in
going
her
to say maybe they do. They work for Uncle Sugar.
in her $24,000 freezer.
Right.
Um, but I just got back from a work trip over in South Carolina, and you, one thing I know, it was the first work trip we've taken since this all started, and
So it's been a while.
yeah, yeah, it was 5 weeks since we had flown last. But you see 50% of the people wearing masks and gloves and all that kind of stuff, and 50% not. And the ones without masks and gloves are looking at the ones with the mask and gloves, thinking, "Why are those people so crazy? They've got it all wrong. I can't believe they're falling for this." And then the people wearing masks and gloves look at the people that aren't and say, "Why are those people so crazy? Why do they got it all wrong?" We're split right down the middle on this, just like we're trained to be politically,
Right.
and it's scary almost. And none of the rules they have in place make sense to me. But
They don't to me either. I mean, in the beginning, they were saying, don't get masks, leave them for first responders. So a lot of people didn't go out and get masks, and now everyone's getting sick, and now everyone's terrified, and they're saying, don't go out unless you have a mask.
or we'll
But now you
fine you a
can't get a
thousand
mask.
dollars.
Right. And now you go out because you ran out of food, because a lot of people are, I mean, folks like us are okay, but a lot of people have 2 weeks worth of food on hand and they have no mask, and now they got to go out. Now they got to worry about, getting fined, getting tossed in jail, or, 6, 8 weeks down the line when they can't actually pay that fine because work is shut down everywhere and they have no money coming in. and unemployment's broke and everything that everyone was going to rely on is broke. All of a sudden, they didn't pay this fine. Now, there's probably going to be a bench warrant. Now they're going to go to jail. I mean, it's never ending loop of, what the heck?
Well, if nothing else, we're being conditioned to do exactly what we're told, when we're told, and how we're told.
I
And
would agree.
the fact that people are rolling over so easily on curtailing our most basic rights, it's it's setting a precedent. You know,
Mm-hmm.
whatever one president does and gets away with, and this isn't about Trump. This is just a example of setting precedent politically.
All of them.
If one president does something and gets away with it, from that point on, the next president can do it and get away with it because, well, that's how we do things now, right? That was one of the things that upset me about Trump's bump stock ban is he didn't ban the production and sale of new ones. The ones that were legally obtained and legally paid for with taxed income had to be destroyed or confiscated. To me, and that, I mean, a bump stock's not this critical thing, but to me, it was the precedent that no longer will they just ban the sale like the Clinton assault weapons ban. Now they have a
Mm-hmm.
political precedent set to just take it away from you because we allowed it
Exactly.
to happen. We validated the fact that they can do it, and that's what's going to come next, in my opinion, when it comes to gun control. It won't be you can keep what you have. It'll be turn it in or you're a felon tomorrow.
Yeah. But at a certain point, America's going to do what Gonzales, Texas did and said, come and take it.
Right. We need a lot more of that.
Yep.
It's the whole point of the Second Amendment in the first place.
Exactly.
So in your world, so you're in Michigan, or you're kind of out in the boonies a little bit. Are the folks directly around you behaving differently, or is it the folks in the more populated areas, like when you go to the grocery store and stuff, that you see the change? Is everybody kind of carrying the same
It's
load?
right now, and I like Walmart is my favorite place to grocery shop, but since this has gone down, I've been going to places like Walmart and Sam's Club. Uh, Mostly because for me they're a good indicator. You're going to see supply chain disruptions in places like that first, and you're going to see the biggest slice or the biggest variety of people out there. And for the most part, I would say the majority of the folks in my area, at least out in public, are wearing masks. They're trying to do their social distancing. But there's just some people that, they don't care. But the majority here seems to be going along to get along. And it's a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, yeah. Where I'm at, very very rural. Uh, the people around me, you wouldn't know there's a crisis going on if the news wasn't telling you there's a crisis going on. You'd have no idea. You go to a local hardware store that's about 30 minutes from me. That's like the closest hardware store. You go in there. It's daily life. People shaking hands, talking to each other. Nobody's wearing masks. You'd have no idea anything was going on. Then you drive a little further and you get to Crossville. Okay, now you can see a little bit of a difference. By the time if you went to Knoxville or Nashville, it'd be, a totally different world. Now Knoxville is still bustling. People are still going to work. We're not on lockdown. You can't go eat in a restaurant. You can't go in a gym and work out. But aside from that, Tennessee never shut down, and you know, so that's good. But the more populated an area is, the more you see the change. You get into the
Yeah.
rural
Well,
areas.
and with me, I don't live, I mean, I live between two big cities, and in Michigan, it's kind of the most affected by the virus between Flint and Detroit.
And you're
And
sitting in
that
the path.
and I'm sitting in the path. So I'm going to probably see, a little more fear than, the other parts of the state,
Right.
because I'm right in that landing strip, that 50-minute driving worth of strip where
Yeah.
all that stuff is going down.
Yeah. Our hospitals are empty. They're
Mhm.
laying people off. Um, friend of mine's sister's a nurse at the UT Medical Center. It was a big hospital, and the other day they had 5 patients total in the entire medical center, and none of them were COVID patients. And
No.
they're laying everybody off. Our smaller hospitals are doing the same thing. They're all laying people off. My sister-in-law is a nurse at a GI clinic, and they can't get scopes and stuff done for people because there's nobody to do the anesthesia or whatever it is that they need because everybody's laid off. In the middle of a healthcare crisis, we have no healthcare because we have no crisis. I mean,
But
what's the
according
logic
to
in that?
Hillary Clinton, this is a perfect time to get universal health care passed.
Right. Well, collapsing the system is always a good way to get things changed, right?
Exactly.
My wife needs surgery because she's got a ruptured disc in her back, and it's like 5 weeks to get the surgery done. And I don't know if you're familiar with ruptured discs, but that ain't fun. That's something they should be able to
Right.
like just get you right in and do, but they can't because the hospitals are all closed down because there are no patients. Her orthopedic, doctor, their office had to lay people off. I mean, we're laying people off when they were telling us our hospitals were going to be overrun, and instead they're empty.
Yeah, it really makes me wonder if it's, kind of time to peel the scab off and
Oh, so some people might get COVID-19, but what about the guy that's not getting his colonoscopy and he's going to find out down the road he's got stage 4 colon cancer when it could have been caught earlier and it could have been dealt with? You know,
right.
I mean, there's a the hospitals that are normally full. Those aren't all hair implant surgeries and stuff like that. There's a lot of all those people in there for legitimate things, and those legitimate things are now being ignored. We're
Well,
essentially
I've got a friend in the medical field, and he was kind of sharing general numbers. So I'm not going to get the numbers specifically because I'll butcher them. But he was saying, you usually see so many strokes and so many heart attacks and so many mild cases of this and that in the ERs. And he said, and we're not seeing that lately. People are staying home. And he said, now that doesn't mean that's not happening. It just means it didn't kill them and th're too scared to come into the hospital.
right. They're not getting that episode they had in their chest dealt with properly.
Right.
Like,
So
oh,
he
it
says,
passed,
what's
it
that going to
passed.
do to the rate down the road?
Right. Well, that's what I was getting at about people not being able to get scopes and tests done. We're creating we're holding a dam back. We're letting the waters build up, the healthcare waters build up, and eventually that dam's either going to break, or when we finally open up the floodgates, it's all that's the hospital's going to be overwhelmed, and the hospitals have less staffing because we're getting rid of everybody because there's no
Right.
patients, and we're going to have people with more critical issues than if they would have caught a respiratory virus.
I
So
agree.
we're trading one healthcare crisis for another. But anyway, um, you've got a lot of books and a lot of the different subjects. Preparedness is obviously one of your focuses. For the people who have read your books, let's say before all this went down, um, is there a specific book? Is there a specific series you think that more closely relates to this situation and maybe would mentally prepare someone for it?
Um, I would say probably the closest might be One Man's Opus because it's kind of an introduction to a guy that's just starting to get into prepping and he's thinking about different scenarios and he doesn't know exactly what scenario is going to happen. And, um, he does whatever he can to try to get ready. And the basics, to begin with, is shelter, food, water, security. So, in the case of that book, it was civil unrest that caused him to bug out. But it could have easily been a virus or, you know, a Red Dawn situation, whatever.
Right.
It's the story kind of fits a lot of different scenarios in the beginning, just thinking about what might happen and trying to get ready for it.
Yeah. One reality, all the scenarios uh, kind of end up in the same place. Whether it's a zombie apocalypse book and or a virus, or like you said, the Red Dawn situation. The the need to be self sufficient and to have the proper mindset, which is where it all starts, on being able to take care of yourself and not having to depend on the outside for everything, is the same. You know, it really doesn't matter what the scenario is. So I always joke about zombie apocalypses because if you're prepared for the zombie apocalypse,
You're prepared
and
for
you're
everything.
prepared for everything. You're prepared for the starving masses that know you have something. You know, those are just your zombies now. you know,
Hmm.
um, you're if it's the government or coming after you, those are your zombies now. You know, it kind of fits all situations. Um, how many books do you have out total now?
I don't know. Un- if it's just my name, I think I'm between 30 and 45.
Awesome.
I I don't know.
And have how many of those are preparedness minded?
Um, most of them, I would say there's probably 7 or 8 that aren't.
All right, so people, if they start reading Boyd Craven, they're gonna get a good sampling of the preparedness mindset then.
Yeah.
So, are you willing to tell us your other pen names?
Um, I'll give a hint on one of them. Play around with the initials of my first and middle name.
Okay. I don't know your middle name, so I can't play around with it. But
I
did you
know.
say your first and middle name?
Yep.
Okay. Well, there you go, folks. So I guess he threw that out there because if you're already into reading that genre, you probably won't. You'll probably get along with it.
Yeah. People like, reading about vampire romance. I guess there's a name out there too, but
sh- 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 are they shape shifting romantic vampires or?
well, that's another name.
Okay, okay.
No, and then I've got a couple romance pen names, but I would say back in 2014 ish, there was a big push on Amazon to get rid of anything that was that even mentioned, sexy times that did more than, like closed door stuff. And they were pulling down like entire accounts. Like, let's say you had one romance book, but it wasn't your main thing and you wrote it under a pen name. Well, if that book got reported, instead of Amazon looking at things, they just not only would they take that book down at a certain point, but they disable that author account.
Oh
So
wow.
I've got a lot of books that just I unpublished after a while because I didn't want to get hit by that. My post apocalyptic stuff was taking off, and I wasn't making as much, or you know, in some cases, I wasn't making anything anymore because it seems like books have a life. Like you can only sell to your audience so many extra books, and if people aren't, reading that genre, you're not going to really expand your audience.
Right.
So, I mean, I think at a certain point you hit your theoretical limit, and with my romance stuff, it was very niche, and I think I hit my limit on that.
Yeah, that would be awful to have your whole account taken down and bankrupt you overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the folks that are living on it, not just doing it as a hobby.
Right. So for me, it was a case where I just probably unpublished 60 or 70 titles.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Were those full
Not
novels or novellas?
a mixture of both. I would say about half and half.
Holy cow, 60 to 70 titles. Man, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, but when you look at the whole, my post-apocalyptic was paying the bills.
Hmm.
Like for the first time, I wasn't making, beer and beer and steak money. I was making like I could actually like maybe pay off my house in 10 years type of money. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So, what's in your future? Are you sticking with post apoc for now? Do you have other things on the horizon? Branching out any?
I am going to branch out a little bit. I do a little science fiction once in a while. Awaken Control was kind of my first stab at that, and I know there's going to be someone named Douglas Verdig who's going to ask me about that. So there's your plug. I'm going to write the second book in that. Um, let's see. I really like writing mysteries, but I'm not very good at it. When I write those, it's a mental health thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Same thing. I've written a couple of urban fantasy books. Those, when I write outside of post apoc, it's usually for fun and to experiment and try different things. But right now, I'm working on kind of a sea adventure survival story. It's not necessarily prepping, but it's got the survival aspects in it.
Right.
And after that, I don't know. I've got probably four half started and half finished stories that get back into survival and prepping.
Is it was it the Rune Chronicles? Can't remember the
Yeah, the Rune Site Chronicles.
Rune Sight. Yeah, that's what it
Yep.
is. Because it had visions, right? So
Yep.
is that one of your urban fantasies, or is that
Yep.
because that's a prepper urban fantasy hybrid, isn't it?
Kind of, yeah. Well, and the guy's, superpowers, he can see the future, but he can only see like 3 seconds into the future. So it keeps him from getting shot. But
That'd be
when
handy.
everyone's out gunning for this guy, he's got to set things up so he can either win or get away.
Right. Again, survival's the same whether it's zombies or pandemic or supernatural. you know,
Exactly.
you gotta. It's the mental thing. You gotta open your eyes to the world around you, regardless of what that situation is.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm branching out just a little bit. I'm currently working on a western, which I mean that's right up my alley because that's the way I live. But also, to me, a western is essentially a post-apocalyptic book because if you took everybody in America today and you threw us into the mid to late 1800s, to most people it would be a straight up apocalypse. No air conditioning, no internet. You got to work hard for your food. You've got dangerous threats, and the government's not just going to step in and save you. Essentially, the daily life back then would be considered the apocalypse today. There's a lot more similarities to that genre than I think some people realize. It's just instead
A
of
Western would be fun, but I would be afraid to write one myself.
I'm having a blast with it, and I can't wait to narrate the audiobook myself because I could really uneducate it up with my with my dialect.
Now, are you a Louis L'Amour fan?
I've tried his stuff. I think it's a little. I don't want to. I don't want to say
Yeah.
anything negative about it because I mean, obviously, he was a super successful writer, and people really went for his products, his books. But so he was doing it right, compared to me. But I'm not so much into the preset pattern, the preset cookie cutter,
Right.
And if I hear, and this isn't Louis L'Amour, it's somebody else, but like I said, I don't want to name names, but if it's a little bit too much of that Hollywood gunfighter esque type thing, that
Yep.
that I lose that. I want the grit, I want the the roughness of the world they lived in. I want to see that, I don't want to see somebody magically can shoot the embers off of a cigarette on somebody's mouth 50 yards away with a 7.5-inch Colt single action army that would be lucky to hit the side of a house at 50 yards away.
Right.
you know, up close that thing's you could if you had it clamped down in a vise to where there was no shooter's error whatsoever. You could not program that gun in any way to take the ashes off the end of a cigarette. There's not that kind of consistency. There's not that kind of reliability. So to me, that kind of stuff's false. And I just,
You want to make a more accurate Western.
I want realism. Yeah, I want realism. And if somebody, obviously, I can't do it quite to the level I'd like. But if somebody from back then came into the future and read it, I would want it to make sense to them.
Yeah.
That's how I was with Erebus. It was.
I love that book. I love that book,
Thanks.
man. I love that book.
Did you ever Google while you were reading, like I told you to?
Uh huh.
It's
No,
all.
I did.
That's the crazy thing is it's all true. Well, most of
Yep.
it.
I actually looked up the maps um, of the base down there.
Yeah. Well,
That was really good.
yeah, just need to find a Hollywood producer that agrees with you on that. But my goal with that was if one of the few people on Earth who's ever wintered over in Antarctica read it, that they wouldn't
Hmm.
wave the BS flag, and probably 200 people alive that's that's done that. But it's funny at one of the prepper camps there was a woman who was the sister of one of my post-apocalyptic readers. They came by and they were, she was asking about the books because she wasn't a post-apocalyptic reader, and she saw the title Erebus and saw that there was snow and ice on the cover, and she picked it up and asked me about it, and I started explaining it to her, and she had wintered over in Antarctica.
Oh wow.
She had been there for the peak season, and then she had wintered over. And I guess it kind of validated my research because we started talking. I was talking about the pub and this building and that building, and oh yeah, this happened over. And we were chatting like we had both been there. It's like I had the maps of that place in my mind, and after she walked off, I thought, well, that kind of somewhat validates my
Your
research
research and
because I felt like
exactly.
I was talking about a place I was thoroughly familiar with, and it all made sense to her. So now I just wonder what she would think, what she thought about it. Because I gave her one of them.
And by the way, I love Franklin's cameo. After what he did to me in his books, I was like, yes.
Killing each other's fun.
I know.
So, I gave you a long cameo in that recent one. You're in there for like 4 chapters in Breaking the Beast 2.
I haven't read it yet.
And you didn't die crying on a toilet or anything embarrassing like that. But no, I threw you in there as a cameo, and then the character I was using you as was useful, so I just kept it, kept running with it.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but so when's your next new release? For the folks that have already read all 300 of your books, what do they have to look forward to?
I'm hoping Dead Man's Cave will be done by the end of May. It'll be completely done, edited, and out the door.
So Dead Man's Cave. So that must be your that's your sea adventure. Your
Right.
That's got a kind of a what's that guy's name? Clive Cussler kind of sound to it. Dead Man's
Yeah.
Cave. That's a good title.
Well, and then I'm kind of cheating a little bit. I'm writing from the point of view of a character who's never really been around boats, but he can fix motors. So, I don't have to remember port, starboard. You know what I mean?
That's
I don't.
that's smart though, because if you were writing from the perspective of an experienced sea captain, every guy out there that reads it who has experience on the water, could be throwing the flag at you.
Right.
Um,
Instead of just smiling and, mentally kicking me in the butt for not knowing, I can, have a character that honestly doesn't know and he's trying to figure it out as he goes. And,
right.
you know,
Yeah, that's good, and that's back to that the plausibility. I mean, to me, if you can't sell me on the story, I can't enjoy it. you
right.
know if you try to fake something that you weren't familiar enough with to get right, you wouldn't be able to sell me on it. But if I am an inexperienced person on the water and I'm reading a book where the perspective that I see is a person that is inexperienced on the water, I can latch onto that. You can sell that to me, even
Right.
if it's not got all the nautical, you know, terms and all the navigational things and all that kind of stuff. It would still resonate with me because I could put myself in that person's shoes. So
Well, and I could do the research, but I could still get it really wrong.
right.
Um, you know, I've got I've got writer friends that do write sea adventures that I could definitely call on. From Marines to guys that were in the Navy and Air Force, and then again, my grandpa's on my mom's side was Navy, and everyone's got a little bit to share, but it's like everything seems like it's even though it's the same, it's a little bit different. What if I start leaning one way and I start using, more of US Navy type stuff versus, I'm writing about a fishing captain and not, what I mean, military. There was just so much research if I went that route. And I'm like, but my guy's from, downtown Chicago. He was never on a big boat. He wouldn't know this stuff. And then I went, oh, he wouldn't know this stuff. So it's okay not to, you know, beat everything over the head and be perfect on it.
Right.
I can just write them not knowing all that stuff. And I know it sounds like a simple thing, but it was like light bulb.
No, I mean that's the smart way to do it. You know what you need to do though is you just go up to Alaska for a crab season and go work on one of those boats for a season. Then you can come back and have all this first hand information that you can use to write a killer book.
Right.
Not that that's not a killer book, but see, and you could blog about it, and we could all live vicariously through your life on a crab boat as the rookie.
Oh man, I would get my ass kicked. I'm too old to be someone's rookie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's something I would have done a long time ago.
I mean, it would have been fun, in my late teens, early 20s, but in my 40s, I don't know if I could keep up.
I would be
Yeah.
doing a lot of stuff today, if I had my mindset today, but I had. Was still in my 20s. It's like I mean, like the Alaska thing. I was in the Navy when the Navy still ran McMurdo Station. They only relinquished it recently, and they had Operation Deep Freeze. I could have easily went and spent a year in Antarctica, but at the time, it was just like, wow, I don't want to do that. It's cold down there. But now, who I am today, oh, that would be like the ultimate adventure. You
Right.
know,
It's like a once in a lifetime opportunity.
yeah, that ship has sailed unless I go down there to be a fry cook like Franklin did. That's why I used him in that position because that's how you get there now. There are people who are PhDs and bankers and all this kind of stuff that end up being forklift operators and fry cooks because that's what gets them in the door.
Right.
So Franklin being a fry cook down there as a struggling writer looking for ideas, that's actually not off the off the
Yeah,
reality.
that's kind of how it works there.
Right. But couldn't leave my kids for that long, but otherwise I'd be all about it. Um, let's see what some folks want to know about
So,
you. Here we go. Let me go all the way back to the beginning. All right. Jeff Motes. Is it true you wear a toupee? I noticed you have the hat on. Is that because your toupee's not on right now? Okay.
nope, because I haven't been able to see a barber in months.
It looks a little toupee-ish from here,
Yeah, I know, but I can pull. It's not.
You've made it to your 40s with a head of hair. That's a feat.
I know.
Um,
And the fact that I always shave it or do something goofy with my hair or wear a hat, has my dad and grandpa always going like,
do they have hair?
no.
See, they're like,
And neither my cousins are bald.
if I had that hair, you'd see it every day. I somehow managed to keep most of mine until my 40s, and but I still always wearing a hat, just like you said, always wearing a hat, and but it's because I'm lazy, I guess. Don't have to comb it.
That's me
Um,
right now. Mine's just getting too long. I'm not growing it out on purpose this time. You know, I was keeping it nice and neat, and unless I let my wife loose with the clippers, which might happen sooner or later.
I was hitting that point. I was getting to where the hair's curling out from under the hat, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my my stepsister just happens to do hair for a living, and we were in the same place at the same time, and she just happened to have her equipment, so I was
That works out.
able to get it knocked out. Um, from Jax McQuiggan, Mayor McQuiggan, uh, have you gotten the package yet? I sent you. No, of course not, because I'm lazy when it comes to sending something.
So that's still a no.
Yeah, right. It's not just going to materialize. Um, would you please train our dog next? This one, the Scrappinator, at age 11, is retiring. And I'm not sure if people can see Give the scrapping it. Oh, look at that. My magic software is making my iPad disappear. I can't show you the scrappinator. Maybe if I put it where my head's supposed to be. There's the scrappinator. So the scrappinator is now famous.
As far as training goes, I'm really good at go get me a beer.
Really? I mean, does he really go get you a beer?
No, I'm kidding.
My
Most of the
dog's
stuff we work with is basic obedience, and then when they show like a protective, you know, protective streak, try to encourage that.
right.
I mean, that's what I do. I'm not a professional dog trainer, though. I know some, and a long time ago, I've hung out with a few, but that's kind of my that's my background.
So you're basically the reward the good behavior and don't reward the bad.
Kind of. I mean, my dog's pretty well behaved until he sees a squirrel, and then it's. I'm sorry if Mel is ever watching this, but my dog hates squirrels. He thinks they're the devil, and he will eat every single one he can catch.
And they're delicious. I mean, yeah, I grew up in Appalachia. My grandparents used to like bake squirrel and fry squirrel, and it was legit food.
Mm-hmm.
Those folks, if you especially take the Great Depression era people in Appalachia, the Great Depression didn't mean a whole lot because they were always poor, but they didn't have electricity and such. And so if you butchered a cow, what are you going to do with the meat? If you go squirrel hunting every day, you bring home just enough meat for that day.
Right.
The rabbits and the squirrels make total sense in an off-grid, no refrigeration, no food storage world.
Yep. Because getting the salt box loaded and getting the smokehouse going, and then having a dark, cool place to hang meat, and it just a whole cow is a lot.
Right. And you have to live in a very stable world to be able to
Mm-hmm.
do all that and to be able to take advantage of that entire cow. That's not an on the move. That's not a flexible. We got to pack up and go because there's a threat coming kind of world. In that
Right.
kind of world, the little critters, the creepy crawlies, and the squirrels and the rabbits and those are the things that'll keep you going properly.
Yep.
You really need guest shots of Opus and the little editor. That was from Bruce Herder. Is the little editor nearby? No?
No, he's downstairs with my wife.
Editing your latest book.
He's doing more work than I am.
This
He's
is
got a little
work.
leap pad. He's got a little leap pad right now that he's working on teaching himself how to spell.
Oh, yeah, those things are cool.
Yeah.
Um, I
He's
started ours
he's
off with a knobby, and now they're just on a regular iPad.
okay. Yeah, he's 4. He's really determined to learn how to read, and he's spelling some things, but it's I don't know. It's kind of crazy. I don't remember if I was doing more than learning my letters in kindergarten. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I remember in kindergarten I could write my name, and there were some kids in the room who couldn't, and as the teacher would go around the room, and that kindergarten's like when you first realize we didn't all grow up in the same household. Everything's
Right.
not the same everywhere.
Right.
Um, with
But the pup is downstairs too. He's locked up for now. Otherwise, I'd have him up here bumping the door.
So here's a question for you. Since the little editor is 4, are you gonna traditional school or homeschool? Have you thought about it?
We thought about a hybrid. Well, we're pretty much forced into a hybrid situation right now where the school is doing distance learning online. So
Mm-hmm.
we've thought about homeschool, but both of my kids would totally run feral if we did complete homeschooling with them. I think they need the social interaction of a community.
Well,
And I
you,
think,
you'd be
hmm?
surprised. You'd be surprised at how many. You're probably surrounded by resources that you don't know about. I used to be an anti-homeschooler, not really an anti-homeschooler, but I was that whole your kids are weird because they're not socialized mentality. And now that we do it, I wouldn't have it any other way. And there's homeschool co-ops,
Oh,
and
yeah.
where the kids interact and do all kinds of learning activities together. And we have our daughters enrolled in ballet and we music lessons, and we're doing all kinds of extra things with them. And that seems to be a theme with homeschoolers. When we go to ballet, we can look around the room and half of the kids there go to our homeschool co-op.
Right.
It's like those parents specifically want their kids to be exposed to stuff, whereas I think most people's um, knee jerk thought as to homeschooling is, oh, those kids aren't exposed to enough stuff. Well, it's kind of the
Well,
opposite.
in the case with my kiddos, mostly in the beginning is when I'm wanting them to get as much social interaction as they can. As they get older, like Timmy's at the age, I was talking with Kelly. I'm like, is it, are we ready to pull the plug and just do this at home now? We got in trouble with the school 2 years ago, I think. Um, strep resistant, or I'm sorry, antibiotic resistant strep went through his classroom.
Oh wow.
He ended up with it 3 times that year because it kept going around the school.
Uh huh.
And he missed 11 days. And we get one of those nasty grams from the school.
Like it's your fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the only reason I
You
brought
guys
it up,
are,
the only reason I brought it up, is I'm not trying to advocate or push it. I was just, I'm curious as to how many people who, after this situation is over, if it ever is, how many people will just keep their kids at home because they've gotten the opportunity to kind of sample homeschooling.
well,
That's really more what I was getting at.
yeah, with my older one, I'm thinking, we could pull the trigger now and just keep them home and finish schooling them at home. The little guy, is essentially in pre-K.
Hmm.
So we're kind of up in the air on that.
Yeah, a lot of people that never. I just wonder. A lot of people that had never thought about it before. Now that with all this going on, how many it's gonna make them give it a second thought.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine there's some parents that are taking up day drinking just to get through the school day.
But see, when you're a homeschooler, it's not weird that your kids are around. You actually like it.
I
I
know,
mean,
I know. I just had to throw that out there, though.
yeah, the ones that aren't used to it, the ones that push their kids off to go back to
Mhm.
school. Ah, you're driving me nuts.
But for basically the last 10 years, I've always had a kiddo at home with me. Even when I was working for someone else at the farm, I would have, my middle boy a lot of times would go out there with me and we'd do the work and go to the farmer's market. And so I'm kind of used to that. Um, I don't know. It's been fun.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious what it's going to be like when I have all my kids in school,
If they're ever allowed to go back to school.
if they're ever allowed.
Well,
Well, and like I said, with my middle boy, I don't even know if we want to. I mean,
right.
he's doing, and I'm not downing teachers or public schools or anything else, but they're giving him a whole day's worth of curriculum to get through on his Chromebook because the school issues those for all the kids. And it takes my son an hour and a half to finish all of the schoolwork, a whole day's worth of schoolwork that would normally take 8 or 9 hours a day.
Well, see, that's what you quickly learn about homeschooling too. Is a lot of people when they think, "Oh, I don't have the time to put into that," it really isn't that much time because most of the school day is the institutionalization part. I don't
Right.
necessarily mean that in a negative way. There's the homeroom, and then there's the 10 minutes of class changing, and then there's the initial 5 minutes when the class where nothing happens, and then the teacher gives a lecture. Then they're helping some other kid, and your kid's sitting there drooling on themselves, looking out the window because there's nothing going on for them. And then the bell rings, and it changes class again. Another out of that whole school day, there might only there's legitimately only an hour and a half of learning and schoolwork to do, and that's why it's taking him an hour and a half. That is what is involved in that day. So you can homeschool and be done before lunch
Exactly.
without cutting corners.
Hmm.
You can hit the whole curriculum because you're not doing all of that institutionalized wasting of time.
And that's if he only wants to do, a day at a time. When and I've mentioned this before. I've got an older son that's grown up now. When he was little, he got sick and he couldn't go to school for kindergarten and a good chunk of first grade, and he was homeschooled. And by the time he decided he wanted to go back to public school, by the time he got back, he was so far ahead. They made him sit back out for another, I don't know, months at a time. It's like he's not sick anymore, but he's so far ahead of everyone else. Either he starts skipping grades, which at his age really wouldn't have been good,
Right.
or you wait. And so we waited.
Yeah. See, I mean, and you accidentally had him ahead, right?
Right,
I mean,
right.
you
He's
don't
just
have
like,
to
I'm
be a
kind of bored, but I like this reading assignment, and math is kind of fun, and social studies is kind of like history, and history goes along with this, and you know,
well, and you're not holding him back to the curve. In like I flash back to a lot of my own memories in school, and I think about how many times I just sat there drooling on myself and looking out the window, like I mentioned before, because the teacher's helping other kids.
right,
you're not all in the same place. Or I would have been those kids getting Ritalin because there was times that I couldn't pay attention anyway. The whole class was a complete waste. The teacher starts off writing a math problem on the board. I'm like, I'm really going to pay attention today. Next thing you know, the whole chalkboard's covered with stuff. I look around, other kids are like 12 pages ahead of me. And I'm like, what happened?
right.
Like I just disappeared there for a minute. So I ended up having to learn it on my own at home anyway. So, but like I said, I would have been one of those medicated kids. I'm sure of it. So, here's a question from Win Anderson. Did you start a new Garage Plague metal band?
No,
Um, here's a
but if I
familiar.
did, it would probably be something like, ooh, Lordy or Guar.
What instrument do you play in that band?
Probably drums, but it's probably been 30 years since I've last sat behind a full drum set.
Oh man, what a waste! You're in your 40s. That's when your brain's finally waking up. You could,
I know,
pull that stuff out.
I know.
I was into music when I was younger and forgot about it forever. And lately I've kind of reacquainted with it. Now I'm learning at a pace that would have been unheard of when I was even in my 20s. Everybody, I don't know where you can't teach an old dog new tricks come from. For me, I'm 5 times more able to learn and absorb things today than I was when I was young. And I don't know if that's just a work ethic thing or what, but if I sit down to learn something now, I can. And in the past it would have been a lot more work.
No, I that's one of the things I kind of regretted giving up, but a place to practice, I don't know. Drums aren't something where I can just kind of sit back and play quietly. After a while, it gets really loud.
Yeah, our son had when we lived in Knoxville. We had a basement and I had guitars and basses hanging on the wall, and we had a full drum set that was his. And when he played the drums, you basically couldn't even be in the house. I mean, you weren't,
Hmm.
and he was down in the basement. You couldn't watch something upstairs. You had to literally go outside. It was almost unbearable. Man, that's why they make those electric sets now. Turn them down. I mean, it's not ideal,
Those were,
but
that's not a bad idea because those were coming out right around when I was graduating.
and they're pretty good now. I don't know what they were like back then, but I know our church has a full band and they use electric drums, and I'm sure it's so that they can match the sound levels to where they want them.
Yeah.
Instead of having to bring everything else up to match the drums, you can bring the drums down to match everything else. So in your house, you could wear headphones or just turn them down. You know. So.
Probably take up a lot less room too.
Oh yeah, they're
A
tiny.
full drum set. I mean, I would be giving up office space for something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to have
Like,
room to flail around and twirl your drumsticks and all that, you'd need half your relive your hair metal days. You'd need
yep.
like half a room.
Yeah. For me, it was back around when Nirvana was still cool.
Oh,
Well, when Cobain was still alive, anyway.
that was the beginning of the if you could play guitar, you had to pretend like you couldn't play guitar era.
Right.
Talent was uncool. I lived in Seattle from late '92 to 2000. Well, in the Seattle area from late '92 to 2005. So I was there during the '90s flannel
Yeah.
wearing grunge days. It was a good music scene.
Yeah, I was really big into grunge back then. It was, I don't know, just about everything I listened to. But then Pantera came along. Well, they were already around, but
So were you ever a new metal guy?
I don't even know what new metal is, honestly.
Yeah. But I'm not sure what it is either, but I know a lot of the YouTube channels that I watch for guitar stuff, they all make fun of it. So I'm gonna I'm gonna have to Google it one of these days to figure it out.
You know, for me back then, I didn't really consider Metallica metal, even though a lot of people did. For me, it was more like
Symphony.
Pantera and Biohazard and, bands like that.
Mm.
Maybe a little bit of
Oh,
Anthrax.
I loved Anthrax. Yeah,
Yeah.
that. And when I was in high school, I don't know if I think it's junior year, sophomore or junior year, one of the two. Um, my two most worn out and constantly replaced tapes, yes, tapes, was the Guns N' Roses debut album and Anthrax, the one that had Field and Noise, not Field and Noise, and um, God, I can't. I think all the songs run around in my head, but I can't think of them right now. But yeah, I wore those two out. I really liked Anthrax.
And then Megadeth, when Symphony of Destruction came out.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was right there with you.
Yep.
Not so much these days, but back then.
Yeah. I don't know. These days, I kind of like the newer Five Finger Death Punch. I think they're kind of picking up where a lot of the bands left off.
I'm weird now. I don't know if it's because I'm in my 40s or what, but if I go through YouTube, I'll go from a Christian song to a classic rock song to a hard song to some guy doing a cello solo. And then two guys with two stand up basses, playing a tune together, and then I'll be back to some harsh guitar riff kind of thing. I'm kind of all over the place, everywhere but rap or country rap, either one of those. They just stay away
Yeah.
from those. But oh, and even country, bluegrass. I'll love bluegrass stuff. I'm just all over the map now.
Well, what's kind of funny is we'll be flipping through the radio when we're driving somewhere, and I'll stop on a song, and the kids are like, "Hey, this isn't too bad." And then they're, "Thanks for listening to classic rock," and they're like, "This is classic, Dad," like old people music, and I'm like, "Oh
You're
my
like,
god!"
no, this ain't classic. It just came out, and then you start doing the math.
Like this
It
came
just
out like 1994. Come on,
wait, how many decades was that?
right? And then you got to do math, and then it's like, oh,
That is
it's
classic.
timeless. It's timeless.
Right, it's not
It's not
classic. It's
classic. It's timeless.
timeless rock. That's the way to look at it. Classic is what your dad listened to, right?
Right. Classic
Um,
Simon and Garfunkel.
Here's a question from Chad C.A. Rudolph.
Hmm.
It's a familiar question. I've seen this somewhere before. Are
Yep.
you a robot?
Yes.
I remember when I asked him that one, because you asked that to him. He was like, "What does that mean?" He's like, "What's he getting at?"
It doesn't mean anything.
I think he was truly trying to figure out: is there something about me that's robotic? Like you might have caused a complex with that one.
Honestly, when I asked that question, there wasn't like I think I was the very first one on that. And I'm like, is everyone waiting to post their question, but they don't want to be the first one? Is it
Right.
like
So you're the
being the first?
icebreaker.
Yeah, like you have, let's say you're going to a banquet at church. Everyone's standing around waiting for the first person to go and get their plate before everyone's going to line up behind them. You know
Right.
what I mean? I just kind of thought maybe this is a situation like that where, once you break the ice, you know,
Well, he's
so
he's back to seeing his therapist again. Good job. The fragile shell of a man that he was has been dismantled over that one
that was
simple
all it
question.
was for me. I just wanted a funny icebreaker question.
um, Joanne Epperson. Why do you continually torture Joanne, such a sweet gal, with that horrid Baby Shark song?
Because she loves it. She's the one who usually tags me in it, so I don't think it's really torturous to her. It's
It
like one of those things where she doth protest too much.
right. Um, I've never even listened to the Baby Shark song, and the way people carry on, I think I probably shouldn't.
No. And
Uh,
don't let your daughters ever listen to it, ever, 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 ever.
they only get to listen to music that's in their piano lessons. Um, Another one from Joanne. What do you have against pineapple, and why won't you allow it on pizza? That's a good question because pizza with pineapple on it is phenomenal.
I don't know. I'm a traditionalist. I actually like pineapple in general, but on pizza, no.
To me, pineapple, well, you can do the ham if you want, but pineapple with jalapenos and banana peppers is perfect because you get the saltiness from the cheese, you get the spiciness from the peppers, you get the sweetness from the pineapple. It's like this a symphony of flavor.
I don't know. I would go all of that except for pineapple. I would go ham and green olives for the sweet and salty.
I guess you could pretend ham is sweet, but the tomatoes. I mean, you could get that out of tomatoes, I guess. But you're missing, man. You're missing out. You just got to give in one of
I've
these
had it.
days.
I don't, it's not my favorite.
Maybe for you, it's like some people with sushi. You ever met those people that the first time they eat sushi, they're like, "Oh, is this so gross?" I guess, and then after they eat it 2 or 3 times, they're like, "Oh, I love sushi."
Yeah.
Maybe that you got to get. It's the mental thing. It's raw fish, sick. But then once you realize this raw fish is delicious,
Right.
you change your outlook.
No, I've had it more than a few times. I just, it's not me.
Okay, so Franklin Horton, brother Franklin. How many books have you had cameo appearances in? That's a good one actually because we kind of all use Boyd.
Um, you guys, I'm thinking maybe 5 authors have me as some sort of character or victim.
Character slash well, or demented serial killer type guy.
Mhm. Yep.
Franklin's first use of Boyd,
Yeah.
creepy Boyd.
Love my rocks.
Yeah,
And you guys got to read the book to know the reference. So
yeah. You can just imagine what a creepy guy would do with rocks, though.
bad things,
Yeah.
especially if he's a serial killer.
Um, and then Joanne added a sub question under that question and said, "Which one was your favorite?" Of course, you've not seen how heroic you can be yet because you
Yeah, I was
haven't
gonna
read
say I've
mine.
got
So
to.
yeah,
I'll have to go through and reread a couple of books and then read your second book. Um, I don't know. It's a hard one to pick. I don't know.
um,
I was also, yeah, I don't know.
it's hard. It's hard to pass up the being a serial killer, though. I mean, everybody needs to be able to live that every now and then.
Well, it does give me like when people say describe your job badly. I could, I say in theory and on paper, I'm one of the world's most successful serial killers, right?
Yeah.
Because of my job and because I've been a serial killer in a couple of books. So,
And you know what? That's the ultimate cover. If you just put it right out there, everybody thinks it's a joke.
right.
I can make creepy van jokes all day long. And people, oh, he's just being funny. Is he?
But you got the van.
Yeah, is he? His van has a sink in it, my van literally has a sink in it. It's not a camper van. So what's that sink for?
Right.
You
For
gotta
fishing.
get the blood off somehow, right?
Exactly.
Uh,
Does it drain outside the van or do you get a little?
it's like a household sink built into custom cabinets inside of a creepy cargo van.
Yeah, but does it drain outside of the van or does the
Yeah,
blood
yeah.
stay inside so you can dispose of it elsewhere?
It has a tank and then a drain that's straight down underneath, so you can wait till you get to that discreet location, then flush the tank.
Gotcha.
You can't just have blood coming out in the parking lot. I mean,
Yeah, that
a
might be
little
awkward.
obvious. You've not seen the creepy van in person, have you?
Not in person, just in pictures.
Um, Chuck Terrell, I heard let I heard you let a girl outfish you and you threw a fish at her, asking for a friend.
This is true. So I went out deep sea fishing with Chuck and Steph in Florida last year, and she had luck. Like, she's fishing in the middle, Chuck's on one side of her, I'm fishing on the other, and every time she drop her line in, she's hauling fish up. And my fishing technique sucked for deep sea fishing apparently because being from Michigan, I don't fish with circle hooks. With circle hooks, when you try to jerk to set the hook, you pull, the hook right out of their mouth. So I was screwing up for most of that trip until someone's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm trying to set the hook." And they're like, "No, you don't set the hook. You just start reeling." I'm like, "That's what you guys keep saying, but that's so different." And they're like, "Just do it."
Right.
And I'm like, "All right." So I started catching a couple of fish at a time when other people weren't. And so we weren't supposed to take the fish off. It's a liability and licensing thing for the charter boat.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, if you need to, just, if it comes off the hook, just toss it on the ground and we'll get it. And so, I pull this fish up and it's like flopping around. It comes off. And I just kind of like, as it's going down, I kind of like kick it like a little hacky sack, trying to get it behind me so they'll see it when they come through, because I didn't want to step on a fish while I'm, the boat's rocking like this and I'm trying not to puke and fish and everything all at the same time. And yep, I smacked Steph with a fish.
You've really developed your cover story for that well.
Yeah. Well, they
I'm going
tease me
back
about
to the
that
you were
all the
mad that she
time.
outfished you.
Oh, she did. But that's also the fish slap story. I was tossing the fish but yeah, she was so far ahead though. I had no chance of catching up. That's why I told her this year or next year, we'll see.
So, Sam Baker, how many of your books did Opus actually write?
Only two.
I guess that's where the dictation comes from, right? And that's why you had to do all the
Yeah,
soundproofing behind you. You had to his had to be clear enough to be understood.
exactly.
Darlene Lindsay, this kind of goes along with what we were talking about before about your upcoming works. How many books will you release before 2021? So that expands on that. You're talking about the one Dead Man's K, I believe you said what it was called. That's coming out next. What's beyond that? What do you got on the plate for the rest of the apocalypse here?
I'm kind of hoping that I'm going to get, and this is, some people are going to find this funny, some aren't, but I had this idea called 420 Prepper, and it's about a guy that grows marijuana, who's also a prepper, and his kind of misadventures. And
Okay.
it's not meant to be taken serious. It's like
You need to
Cheech
do
and
that.
Chong in the apocalypse. You know what I mean?
Considering the world we're living in today, I think people could use a lighthearted apocalyptic tale. So I think your timing is right on with that.
So, I mean, that's one of them. I've got one right now, and I'm sure a lot of us have books out there that are related to the lockdown that's going on right now with the virus. And mine is right now kind of dealing with what's going to happen, but I think there's going to be potentially civil unrest caused by the lockdowns and that story. And I've got that one started, but I'm hoping I can finish that one soon.
If you don't get that one out soon, it'll be more like a news article than a fantasy.
Yeah. Well, especially with what's happening today. We'll see what goes on in Michigan.
What's that?
We've got the second set of protests, the Operation Gridlock in Lansing. So uh, basically, people are going to get in their cars and they're going to drive around the Capitol and cause basically everything in the Capitol to gridlock.
Make them shut down like they're making everybody else shut down.
Yep.
Brilliant.
And they've got, today is the vote to either extend or cancel the governor's executive powers for the emergency declarement or
Declaration.
declaration. Yeah, for a second there, I just fuzzed out and couldn't think of the right word.
Just because you're an
But yeah,
author doesn't mean you're supposed to be good with words.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
That's why they have editors,
I
right?
sound so much smarter if I can type it out first.
That's kind of like the guy that starts the business and makes the money, and then the accountant that helps them manage it all properly.
Hmm.
So that it's kind of the same relationship. We
Well,
might come up with the idea, but we need somebody to help us manage it properly.
right. Well, and I'm always the guy that thinks of like the perfect comeback 10 minutes after the argument is done,
Right.
which is kind of the neat thing about being a writer because you can work on your timing.
Right. Exactly. Um. So is that the only thing you're going to let us in on? Is the 420 prepper and the Dead Man's K for 2021?
And the lockdown
Oh yeah, the
book.
lockdown book. Right. See
Um,
my ADD. See, I need those drugs.
I was gonna say I'd have to look on my hard drive and see. I'm gonna try to get the last Rune Sight book done, and I've got Awaken Control, the second book that I'm calling Steady Control. I've got that almost at the half point also. So if I can get two or three of the serious books done, then I can do a couple fun books and then alternate.
Awesome. Yeah, the world needs fun books right now. I think you definitely need to move forward with those.
Hmm.
Um, I know if I, like I said on during Chad's interview, if I was in the middle of a real zombie apocalypse, the last thing I'd want to do is read about the zombie apocalypse. So,
Hmm.
bring some levity to the world.
Right.
Um, W.J. Lundy, Wilhelm is his first name for those who don't know. Um, Wilhelm Joaquim Lundy. I think Hoquiam or I think that's how it's supposed to be pronounced. But I'm American, so it's Joaquim. But anyway, how many of your stories are a result of lead poisoning versus alcohol poisoning?
I would say equal parts at this point. But I've quit dipping the paint chips in with the paint thinner, so we'll see how that works.
Well, those blend really well together. I love how the thinner kind of the paint chips kind of thicken up the thinner. When they
Hmm.
dissolve just enough to. I mean, just it just washes down so easy. Um,
Yeah, I funny enough, I always wear those right drunk edit sober shirts. I don't even drink coffee when I'm writing because anything that any little jolt seems to kind of throw me off my game a little bit. And I'm very like I've got a playlist with like 5 or 6 songs that kind of play on a loop in the background, and I write first thing in the morning when I first wake up before I do anything else. And
that's the way I gotta be. Once the day gets going, that's all over.
but my editing process, I actually don't do a lot of my own edits. I got to farm that out because after writing it, I don't see the same errors. You know what I mean? I know what
Right.
I was trying to say versus what's actually on paper. And
Your eyes read what's supposed to be there.
right, right. So I self edit as much as I can and then I farm it off.
You ever try to edit backwards? Start at the back of the book and scroll the other direction. That helps
I I don't know. I don't think so.
because
I usually I'll usually do a read through with a program called Natural Reader, and then I'll pick like a different voice to read the book back at me, and it'll highlight as it's going. So if you get like an awkward sentence or you use the wrong word, it'll sound really weird, and so I can edit it right in that program, and it'll save it to the Word file, and then I'll go from there.
oh nice, you got it down. No wonder you've got 1,000 books out. Paul Hendrickson, uh, do you have any favorite books or series that you wrote that you wish you had expanded upon, or that you really enjoyed writing that didn't take off? So something you
Um,
really liked that didn't take off like you hoped it would.
my Rune Site books, those were a lot of fun to write.
I think we've all got one of those. Franklin's got his. What's that one called?
His thriller,
Yeah, his thriller that was fantastic. I listened to it in an audiobook and I was hooked
Random
on it.
Acts.
Random
Is it?
Acts, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I couldn't wait to get back to it. And then that was, sales wise, it was nothing for him. And then, like you've got yours, the thing that you really had fun doing. You're like, man, I hope this takes off because you really loved it. And then it just doesn't.
It's
I can't.
I don't want to say it's soul crushing, but it kind of hurts a little bit.
That's how I was with Erebus. I had you were reading it, before it came out, and I had other folks reading it that I was feeding it to, and people were loved it, and I thought I was going to hit it out of the park on that one because I loved it too. I was passionate about it, and then the people that read it really loved it. Problem
Hmm.
was, there I needed a couple more million people to read it,
Right.
and it just never got there. So so our books that don't take off like we're talking about, it isn't that people don't like them. It's just for whatever reason they don't line up with the algorithm properly.
Well, and here's the business part, because I know we're going to have some readers that are curious. Why don't we always write what we love? For me, it's kind of a business decision. I mean, I love what I write now, but is it, would I have loved to have finished the Runesight Chronicles and the next Awaken Control book? Yeah, but financially, I still got to, pay the bills.
Right.
And those didn't hit it out of the park, and they weren't paying the bills.
Right. And what people need to realize about the sequels to stuff like that is, uh, more people are never going to buy book 2 than bought book 1. More people are never going to buy book 3 who bought book 2 and bought book 1. The numbers trend down. They don't trend up.
Right.
Because for even if people love book 1, they may get wrapped up in other things and never move on to book 2, and on and so on and so forth. So if book 1 didn't sell great, book 4 is going to sell less, guaranteed, than that. And if you need to pay your bills,
Right.
that is a business decision that has to be made. You can't spend months working on stuff that's not going to feed you for the next few months after that.
Exactly. And I mean, those books didn't even cover cost of production.
Right. And
So it
that's a
cost me money and time.
that's a punch in the gut.
But if you get ahead and you can write some books that do well, you can, work on projects like that, because it gives you, or I'm going to wax a little poetic here, it gives me an opportunity to stretch a little bit and try something different. And, I'm not the most technically gifted writer in the world. In fact, I'm, like a methed out monkey that's just discovered caffeine and, cocaine at the same day.
That's the quote I'm going to use in the description for this video. I'm like a methed out monkey that's jacked up on coke and caffeine. Or was that what you said?
I don't know. But I don't have a lot of the technical skills, and I came at this from a storyteller standpoint, and I'm learning the back end of things. Like, you really shouldn't do this. No, this is the Chicago Manual of Style. You should have done this, and no, this is how you actually do dialogue tags, and all the boring stuff I ignored in school because girls were more fun to pay attention to.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
grammar rules definitely was not the thing that draws in your average 16-year-old boy.
well, so I'm going through and I'm learning that and writing these different stories that aren't necessarily going to sell are giving me an opportunity to write, a different point of view, maybe a different tense, and to do things that I'm not, you know, it's different than what I usually or always do. So
Yeah,
that's why I like doing it, even if it makes no sense financially.
but if you didn't stretch out like that and do those things that are in the back of your head, though, you would get burnt out on the stuff that is selling.
Hmm.
So you need that. It's almost a necessary. It's like physical therapy for a writer's brain. Or it's your workout. You've got to be able to stretch those legs. So I guess in that sense, they do pay off in the long run.
Yeah, but you got to make sure you're not going to starve for 4 months or 5 months in between.
Right, right. Not everybody gets Stephen King's type revenue.
No.
Um, Sherry Elliott. Question one: what book of yours do you hate?
Good Fences.
You don't like it?
I was
Good
convinced
title,
that
man. That'd be an awesome Western title.
I was convinced that was the worst book I'd, ever when I got done writing it, and I didn't think it was going to sell. But it was 85,000 words. Um, I think that one I had to pay for like 3 or 4 rounds of editing, and when I went back through and fixed some things, I introduced more errors, and finally I was about to go to a conference in Florida, and my friends just like, just publish it and just get it out there. You're going to be busy for 4 or 5 days. Just see how it does. And I did, and that ended up being one of my best-selling books of all time.
Awesome.
I mean,
You just gotta do that in life. You know, sometimes you just gotta put stuff out, not just in the publishing world, but whatever it is that you're working on. You ever done much
well,
drywall? You ever done any drywall work?
yeah, a little bit.
And how when you put the putty in there and you let it dry and then you sand it down. You're trying to get it perfect because after the paint, you don't want any little thing showing and just a little bit too much comes off. Dang it! Now I can see that line again, so I got to put more back on it. You could do that indefinitely.
Yep,
At some point you just gotta put the paint on it and
exactly.
get going.
Well, and I've also learned that, I trust the reader's opinions more than my own as far as whether or not they like something or are not going to like something because I'm my own worst critic, I think.
My least favorite personally for me, and I think that's just because I was a super rookie at the time when I wrote it, is a favorite of a lot of my readers. That's yes, let them decide.
Hmm.
Will you write some standalone books? Is question 2 for her question thread.
I I generally will have some like in an established world. When I wrote The World Burns, I think I've got 5 or 6 standalones, but they all like you can read them without reading the World Burns series, but you can read these books and they'll completely stand alone. Um, I like doing stuff like that. It gives me a chance to kind of borrow the same elements from the same world, and some of the same characters kind of interact. Um, like when I wrote Rune Sight in the second book, I wrote, one of my characters from a completely different series in a completely different world, and it was kind of fun doing cameos and stuff like that. So yeah, like the book I'm writing right now is probably going to end up being a standalone. Um,
Dead Man's K.
mhm. But I do like to write in series, but I'm not against standalones. It's just the way my mind works sometimes.
Right. Questions 3 and 4. What's your best and worst review? Like Franklin, I make fun of him all the time for he's got one that's called Bumpkin Bloodbath. That's the review. So I love that one personally. I bring it up all the time. Do you have any like memorable, quotable people trying to
Um,
trash you but you actually love it kind of reviews?
uh, Let me look some up. And I swear I'm not going to take too long at this. I'm going to look at some of my worst and some of my best, and I'll start with the still surviving.
It's okay, we can edit. I can have a
Yeah,
fancy
I
little
don't know.
screen flip pop up right now or something like that.
Yeah, sorry. I don't have any that normally stick in my head. Here we go. Yeah, I don't know. I would have to go. I'd have to go searching because I normally don't look at my reviews.
Yeah, I don't anymore. I
I
used to
used to, but
live
either
vicariously through them.
yeah, either they wanted to make me drink and celebrate, or they wanted to make me go hide and burn all my paperwork.
People don't, it's funny too. I never leave bad reviews unless there's something a product that I think people really need to be warned about because it was falsely advertised. But for the most part, I'll get halfway through a book, audiobook, print book, whatever, and if I don't like it, I just stop reading it and move on to something else. I'm not all bent out of shape, and I don't need to somehow make myself feel better inside by trying to destroy the person who put their heart and soul into that product that I just didn't happen to jive with. Just
Right.
just move on, you know. But I don't know if that's because I'm a kind of person that receives reviews, but at the same time, I don't. Before I was a writer, I didn't do it either,
Yeah.
and
I
usually,
guess. I guess the amusing. I do. I can think of a generic amusing thing is the damn it Boyd phenomena.
well, you got a T-shirt out of that one.
Yeah, I did.
Damn it, Boyd.
Because I wrote cliffhangers, and I guess that's probably kind of a common theme. Some people don't like cliffhangers, and some people do.
Yeah,
Um, I used to love watching, old TV programs where it was one cliffhanger from one week to the next. Is Timmy going to get out of the well? Will Lassie, find help in time?
I think that only works if you are a really fast writer or if you write the entire series before you publish it. But
Mm,
to have a cliffhanger that's not going to be answered in 6 months is just cruel.
yeah.
And people are just
Well,
going to move on.
until this year, I would consider myself a fast writer, but I've this year's been rough. I haven't been able to get too much out.
Digging a bunker by hand is a lot of work. I applaud you for that. But like where you were telling me you didn't want to rent heavy equipment because people would know what was going on. It was all about OPSEC. It's a smart move if you're willing to put out the effort.
Yeah.
Uh, what's your pen name? We already talked about that one.
Yep.
Um, Lisa Akers. Obviously, the answer to this one's clear. It's me. Who is your favorite author on our DD12 team? Asking for a friend.
Yeah.
That one's me.
I
It's
I
clear as a
answered
bell.
that one down at the bottom. I don't pick favorites
Nope. At least not publicly, right?
in general.
Wayne Stevens, when did you start writing and what was your first book? I assume those are under the other names type stuff.
Well, I started writing when my parents got an XT computer, so that's probably going to date me a little bit.
Yeah, I
That
doubt
was
most
back
people
what
even
in
know
the
what that
80s?
is.
Yeah,
At least it
an
wasn't a
X.
Commodore 64.
We had one of those too, but it didn't have any way to store anything. So when we got the XT, we had a floppy drive.
Yeah, it'd be awful to get your novel done and somebody in a power flickers.
Right. So back when the XTs were new, we got one of those. And for a long time, I was writing kind of uh, Stephen King, Stephen King fan fiction.
Oh,
I don't know. As a kid, you remember The Dark Half?
no.
Okay. So the premise is a writer writes about a writer who writes about a serial killer. And it's kind of a nod to Westlake writing the Parker novels as Richard Stark. So a writer writing about a writer writing about a serial killer. So I was writing about the serial killer or the serial killer's little brother. That's what I was doing when I was a kid. And funny story
Yeah,
is,
your just serial killer thing seems to go run deep
yeah.
with you.
So so I was writing in class, I don't know, third or fourth grade, and I was going to put it on the computer later on when I got home. And teacher took the notebook and started reading it. And next thing I know, the police are called. I'm in the principal's office. My parents get called out of work, and it was a real awkward thing. And my they called it language arts back then. Teacher came in and goes, "What's going on here?" And she flip opens the book and or the notebook, and she goes, "He's writing a story." And they're like, "This is a story?" And they're like, "Do you know the kind of stuff he reads?" Because back then I'm reading thrillers and Stephen King and Dean Koontz and stuff like that. Because I read everything in the library. I read everything at the school library. I was getting bored, and finally they just let me read whatever I wanted to read. And they said no, and they said, "Well, test his reading level sometime. He's bored. He's writing stuff like this because he's reading stuff like this. He grew out of space pandas, going pew pew at each other a long time ago. You know, so." That's kind of the early days of reading and writing for me. After that, the school is kind of like, oh, okay, you're just weird. We get it.
You are a
Why,
serial
yes, yes,
killer in
I
the
am.
making. So, spend your life. Long story short, um, Gerald Rowlett. Sorry if I got that wrong. Where the hell is Third Sight?
Yep. We touched on that a little bit
Yep,
earlier.
yeah. Joe Trot. I'm interested in learning distilling. Making stove fuels seems like a very useful skill to have. Stove fuels, yeah, right. That's why he wants it. That's how he'll sell his wife on it, right? What's the best way to learn? Did you learn it that way? Or what's the best way to learn? Did you learn it that way? And a friend would like to know if you might be enticed to teach or at least demonstrate it.
Um, the concept is actually pretty simple. You heat up, something that's fermented, and you separate out, the stove fuel. There's a million and one different ways to do that. The trick is to make sure your lawnmower doesn't get lead poisoning and die. And there's a little bit of chemistry involved, but I had a family member that had done that, and you know, I was too little to really do more than make memories. And later on in life, you can kind of practice on that kind of stuff, as and get a fuel alcohol permit for that stove fuel, or you're going to kill that lawnmower. Um, but I mean, they sell the stuff on Amazon, and I know people like to joke around about the ATF, but I don't really think they're looking. Because you can use the same equipment for essential oils, for distilling water, anything. So there's also a lot of, there's entire YouTube channels and forums and stuff like that, because it's not illegal worldwide. You know, it's illegal here because Uncle Sugar can't tax it on you if
Right.
you make it yourself.
Exactly. Follow the root of the evil.
So there is a YouTube channel called Still It, a guy out of Australia. So Joe should look there and see some of his videos. And then there's a forum called homedistiller.org. There's a lot of good resources there. As always, use a VPN and a fake name and email address when you go to stuff like that, just in case Uncle Sugar is really watching. But like I said, I don't think he is. Because unless you're making big quantities and selling it, they don't seem to
Right.
care.
Yeah, that's something I would like to pick up too if my life ever slows down. But I barely have enough time to deal with the things I'm got going on already.
Yeah.
It was a good question, Joe. Here's another Sherry Elliott. Boyd, tell them your pen name. Oh, we've been through that one. I keep hearing it's. I've been keeping it secret for years. Oh, so we can get it out of her. There you go. Hey, Sherry, if you're watching, hook us up.
She figured out, I think, one or two on her own, and I told her one.
Okay. Jessica Bashwinger. Can we speak to Opus, please?
He usually sneaks around and gets on the computer when I'm not looking.
Okay, Tim Ricketts. I'm going to have to look at this one before I read it. So, as a naked monkey, do you have a war with the evil squirrels?
Only if they're stealing my nuts.
A methed out naked monkey on coke and caffeine,
Right.
to be the more accurate. Well, that was all the questions we got, folks. We appreciate every one of those, and we appreciate Boyd showing up today. You got anything else you want to let people know about, or anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Just kind of a thing here. That's my WTF wine.
Oh, I thought that was lawnmower fuel.
Nope, just wanted to show.
What do you got going on in that jar?
That's ginger, guava, strawberry, and banana.
Ooh,
and it actually tastes pretty good.
That sounds
I've
good.
been making sure I'm not going to over ferment it and get all the sugar out of it.
Right.
But yeah, I'm just writing and brewing and doing the stay at home stuff as much as I can stand it till I go fishing.
Well, at least that's not illegal in Michigan.
Yeah, not anymore. I can go with a motor now too.
Yay. Yeah. Well, Boyd, we appreciate it. Thanks for coming, and thank you all for watching. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see y'all again real soon.
All right, thank you.